Brought to you by WikiVidi documentaries. Wales. Wales is a country that is part of the United Kingdom and the island of Great Britain. It is bordered by England to the east, the Irish Sea to the north and west, and the Bristol Channel to the south. It had a population in 2011 of 3,063,456 and has a total area of. Wales has over of coastline and is largely mountainous, with its higher peaks in the north and central areas, including Snowdon, its highest summit. The country lies within the north temperate zone and has a changeable, maritime climate. Welsh national identity emerged among the Celtic Britons after the Roman withdrawal from Britain in the 5th century, and Wales is regarded as one of the modern Celtic nations. Llywelyn ap Gruffudd's death in 1282 marks the completion of Edward I of England's conquest of Wales, though Owain Glyndŵr briefly restored independence to Wales in the early 15th century. The whole of Wales was annexed by England and incorporated within the English legal system under the Laws in Wales Acts 1535-1542. Distinctive Welsh politics developed in the 19th century. Welsh liberalism, exemplified in the early 20th century by Lloyd George, was displaced by the growth of socialism and the Labour Party. Welsh national feeling grew over the century. Plaid Cymru was formed in 1925, and the Welsh Language Society in 1962. Established under the Government of Wales Act 1998. The National Assembly for Wales holds responsibility for a range of devolved policy matters. At the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, development of the mining and metallurgical industries transformed the country from an agricultural society into an industrial nation. The South Wales coalfields exploitation caused a rapid expansion of Wales' population. Two-thirds of the population lied in South Wales, mainly in and around Cardiff, Swansea, and Newport, and in the nearby valleys. Now that the country's traditional extractive and heavy industries have gone or are in decline, Wales' economy depends on the public sector, light and service industries and tourism. Wales' 2010 gross value added was £45.5 billion. Although Wales closely shares its political and social history with the rest of Great Britain, and the vast majority of the population speaks English, the country has retained a distinct cultural identity and is officially bilingual. Over 560,000 Welsh language speakers live in Wales, and the language is spoken by a majority of the population in parts of the north and west. From the late 19th century onwards, Wales acquired its popular image as the land of song, in part due to the Eisteddfod tradition. At many international sporting events, such as the FIFA World Cup, Rugby World Cup and the Commonwealth Games, Wales has its own national teams, though at the Olympic Games, Welsh athletes compete as part of a Great Britain team. Rugby union is seen as a symbol of Welsh identity and an expression of national consciousness. Etymology. The English words Wales and Welsh derive from the same Germanic root, which was itself derived from the name of the Celtic tribe known to the Romans as Volket, and which came to refer indiscriminately to all Celts. The Old English-speaking Anglo-Saxons came to use the term Walisk when referring to the Celtic Britons in particular, and Wheelers when referring to the lands. The modern names for some continental European lands and peoples have a similar etymology. Historically in Britain, the words were not restricted to modern Wales or to the Welsh, but were used to refer to anything that the Anglo-Saxons associated with the Britons, including other non-Germanic territories in Britain and places in Anglo-Saxon territory associated with Celtic Britons, as well as items associated with non-Germanic Europeans, such as the walnut. The modern Welsh name for themselves is Cymru, and Cymru is the Welsh name for Wales. These words are descended from the Brythonic word combrogi, meaning fellow countrymen. The use of the word Cymru as a self-designation derives from the location in the post-Roman era of the Welsh people in modern Wales as well as in northern England and southern Scotland. It emphasised that the Welsh in modern Wales and in the Hen Ogledd were one people, different from other peoples. In particular, the term was not applied to the Cornish or the Breton peoples, who are of similar heritage, culture, and language to the Welsh. The word came into use as a self-description, probably before the 7th century. It is attested in a praise poem to Cadwallon ap Cadfan. In Welsh literature, the word Cymru was used throughout the Middle Ages to describe the Welsh, though the older, more generic term Brython Aid continued to be used to describe any of the Brittonic peoples, and was the more common literary term until c. 1100. Thereafter Cymru prevailed as a reference to the Welsh. Until c. 1560 the word was spelt Cymru or Cymru, regardless of whether it referred to the people of their homeland. The Latinized forms of these names, Cambrian, Cambrook, and Cambria, survive as lesser-used alternative names for Wales, Welsh and the Welsh people. Examples include the Cambrian Mountains, the newspaper Cambrian News, and the organizations Cambrian Airways, Cambrian Railways, Cambrian Archaeological Association, and the Royal Cambrian Academy of Art. Outside Wales, a related form survives as the name Cumbria in northwest England, which was once a part of Hen Ogledd. The Cumbric language, which is thought to have been closely related to Welsh, was spoken in this area until becoming extinct around the 12th century. This form also appears at times in literary references, as in the pseudo-historical Historia Regum Britanniae of Geoffrey of Monmouth, where the character of Camber is described as the eponymous king of Cymru. Prehistoric origins. Wales has been inhabited by modern humans for at least 29,000 years. Continuous human habitation dates from the end of the last ice age, between 12,000 and 10,000 years before present, when Mesolithic hunter-gatherers from Central Europe began to migrate to Great Britain. At that time sea levels were much lower than today, and the shallower parts of what is now the North Sea were dry land. The east coast of present-day England and the coasts of present-day Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands were connected by the former landmass known as Doggerland, forming the British Peninsula on the European mainland. Wales was free of glaciers by about 10,250 BP, the warmer climate allowing the area to become heavily wooded. The post-glacial rise in sea level separated Wales and Ireland, forming the Irish Sea. Doggerland was submerged by the North Sea and, by 8,000 BP, the British Peninsula had become an island. By the beginning of the Neolithic, sea levels in the Bristol Channel were still about lower than today. John Davies has theorized that the story of Cantre our Gwarelod's drowning and tales in the Mabinogion, of the waters between Wales and Ireland being narrower and shallower, may be distant folk memories of this time. Neolithic colonists integrated with the indigenous people, gradually changing their lifestyles from a nomadic life of hunting and gathering, to become settled farmers about 6000 BP. The Neolithic Revolution. They cleared the forests to establish pasture and to cultivate the land, developed new technologies such as ceramics and textile production, and built cromlechs such as Pentre Ifan, Bryn Celyddi, and Parc Cwm Long Cairn between about 5,800 BP and 5,500 BP, in common with people living all over Great Britain. Over the following centuries, the people living in what was to become known as Wales assimilated immigrants and exchanged ideas of the Bronze Age and Iron Age Celtic cultures. According to John Teacock and others, Wales in the Late Bronze Age was part of a maritime trading networked culture that also included the other Celtic nations, England, France, Spain and Portugal, where Celtic languages developed. This view, sometimes called Atlantic Celtic, stands against the view that the Celtic languages have their origins farther east, with the Hallstatt culture. By the time of the Roman invasion of Britain, the area of modern Wales had been divided among the tribes of the Decenni, or Devices, Cornovii, Demetae and Silures for centuries. Roman era. The Roman conquest of Wales began in AD 48 and took 30 years to complete. Roman rule lasted over 300 years. The campaigns of conquest are the most widely known feature of Wales during the Roman era, because of the spirited, but ultimately unsuccessful, defense of their homelands by two native tribes, the Silures and the Ordovices. Roman rule in Wales was a military occupation, save for the southern coastal region of South Wales, east of the Gower Peninsula, where there is a legacy of Romanisation. The only town in Wales founded by the Romans, Caerwent, is in southeast Wales. Both Caerwent and Carmarthen, also in southern Wales, became Roman civitates. Wales had a rich mineral wealth. The Romans used their engineering technology to extract large amounts of gold, copper and lead, as well as modest amounts of some other metals such as zinc and silver. Roman economic development was concentrated in southeastern Britain, and no significant industries located in Wales. This was largely a matter of circumstance, as Wales had none of the necessary materials in suitable combination, and the forested, mountainous countryside was not amenable to industrialization. Although Latin became the official language of Wales, the people tended to continue to speak in Brythonic. While Romanisation was far from complete, the upper classes of Wales began to consider themselves Roman, particularly after the ruling of 212 that granted Roman citizenship to all free men throughout the empire. Further Roman influence came through the spread of Christianity, which gained many followers. When Christians were allowed to worship freely, state persecution ceased in the 4th century. As a result of Constantine I issuing an edict of toleration in 313. Early historians, including the 6th century cleric Gildas, have noted 383 as a significant point in Welsh history, as it is stated in literature as the foundation point of several medieval royal dynasties. In that year the Roman general Magnus Maximus, or Maxen Wledig, stripped all of western and northern Britain of troops and senior administrators, to launch a successful bid for imperial power, continuing to rule Britain from Gaul as emperor. Gildas, writing in about 540, says that Maximus departed Britain, taking with him all of its Roman troops, armed bands, governors and the flower of its youth, never to return. Having left with the troops and Roman administrators, and planning to continue as the ruler of Britain in the future, his practical course was to transfer local authority to local rulers. The earliest Welsh genealogies give Maximus the role of founding father for several royal dynasties, including those of Powys and Gwent. It was this transfer of power that has given rise to the belief that he was the father of the Welsh nation. He is given as the ancestor of a Welsh king on the Pillar of Elizag. erected nearly 500 years after he left Britain, and he figures in lists of the 15 tribes of Wales. Post-Roman era. The 400-year period following the collapse of Roman rule is the most difficult to interpret in the history of Wales. After the Roman departure from Britain in AD 410, much of the lowlands of Britain to the east and southeast was overrun by various Germanic peoples. Before extensive studies of the distribution of R1b DNA subclades, some previously maintained that native Britons were displaced by the invaders. This idea has been discarded in the face of evidence that much of the population has, at the latest, Hallstatt-era origins, but probably late Neolithic, or at earliest Mesolithic origins with little contribution from Anglo-Saxon source areas. However, by AD 500, the land that would become Wales had divided into a number of kingdoms free from Anglo-Saxon rule. The kingdoms of Gwynedd, Powys, Dyfed and Saesylg, Morgannwg, and Gwent emerged as independent Welsh successor states. Archaeological evidence in the Low Countries and what was to become England shows early Anglo-Saxon migration to Great Britain reversed between 500 to 550, which concurs with Frankish chronicles. John Davies notes this as consistent with the British victory at Badon Hill, attributed to Arthur by Nennius. This tenacious survival by the Romano-Britons and their descendants in the Western Kingdoms was to become the foundation of what we now know as Wales. With the loss of the lowlands, England's kingdoms of Mercia and Northumbria, and later Wessex, wrestled with Powys, Gwent, and Gwynedd to define the frontier between the two peoples. Having lost much of what is now the West Midlands to Mercia in the 6th and early 7th centuries, a resurgent late 7th century Powys checked Mercian advances. Ethelbald of Mercia, looking to defend recently acquired lands, had built Wat's Dyke. According to John Davies, this endeavour may have been with the agreement of Powys King Elizabeth ap Gwilog, as this boundary, extending north from the valley of the River Severn to the Dee estuary, gave Osworth Street to Powys. Another theory, after carbon dating, placed the dike's existence 300 years earlier, is that it may have been built by the post-Roman rulers of Wroxeter. King Offa of Mercia seems to have continued this consultative initiative when he created a larger earthwork, now known as Offa's Dyke. Davies wrote of Cyril Fox's study of Offa's Dyke. In the planning of it, there was a degree of consultation with the kings of Powys and Gwent. On the long mountain near Trellistan, the dyke veers to the east, leaving the fertile slopes in the hands of the Welsh. Near Rwybon, it was designed to ensure that Cadwal ap Brockwell retained possession of the fortress of Penygadden, and for Gwent, Offa had the dyke built on the eastern crest of the gorge, clearly with the intention of recognizing that the River Wye and its traffic belonged to the Kingdom of Gwent. However, Fox's interpretations of both the length and purpose of the dyke have been questioned by more recent research. Offa's Dyke largely remained the frontier between the Welsh and English, though the Welsh would recover by the 12th century the area between the Dee and the Conwy, known then as Wyberth Edvlad. By the 8th century, the eastern borders with the Anglo-Saxons had broadly been set. In 853, the Vikings raided Anglesey, but in 856, Rhodri Mawr defeated and killed the leader, Gorm. The Britons of Wales later made their peace with the Vikings, and Anarod ap Rhodri allied with the Norsemen occupying Northumbria to conquer the north. This alliance later broke down and Anarod came to an agreement with Alfred, King of Wessex, with whom he fought against the West Welsh. According to Anal Cambriae. In 894, Anarawd came with the Angles and laid waste Ceredigion and Ystrad. Thank you for watching. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Please like and subscribe below. Please like and subscribe below.